This is Jeff.
This is Brandon.
We're the Film Blurs. This episode is brought to you by...
If you're a digital video editor, you need Edius. Edius is all about giving editors the creative freedom to create any application environment. It is designed to put the power in the hands of the editor with incredible flexibility. Edius, editing refined. Edius allows multiple users to edit, work with content as it imports, and getting content to the user incredibly fast. Check out the latest version of Edius that just launched. Download a 30-day trial today at edius.net. Get your films on with the Blurs.
Once an idea has taken hold of the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate.
Unpacking movies has never been more spot on, woke, fire, and just plain lit.
They are lit all the time.
So if you're unsure whether or not to plop down some cash for a film, check out the Blurs.
When a man with a 45 meets a man with a rifle, the man with a pistol is a dead man.
Brondo's got what plants crave.
It's got electromagnetic.
You really only need to hang, mean bastard. But mean bastard, you need to hang.
Don't say you weren't warned. Here's Brandon and Jeff.
Hello, I'm Brandon Norwood, and I'm joined here by...
Jeff Stewart.
And we're doing a special crossover episode today with the KingCast and our good friends Scott Wampler and Eric Vespe.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
I'm a big fan of both of you guys. Before this podcast happened, like Eric, I knew you from Ain't It Cool when you were still writing for Ain't It Cool News, and like I've been reading that since I was 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, love to hear it. It doesn't make me feel old at all.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he makes me feel old all the time. Like my bones feel like they're scraping together every time I have a conversation with him.
So good. I'm a relatively young 40. I'll just put it that way. I've run into that a couple of times because I started writing when I was 17. So it's not as weird as maybe it should be yet. But
and Scott Wampler. Writer for, the now defunct BMD.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. One of my favorite movie blogs ever. So it's like an honor to talk to you because I've read most of your shit.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. We missed the site, but, all things considered, it probably ended when it needed to.
Right.
So for those of you who don't know, Eric and Scott host a podcast called the KingCast, and it is based on Stephen King, all of his works. They're going through with a special guest week by week. And this episode, we're going to follow the format. We're going to talk about Cell, the book, and the unfortunate movie, which to you guys and to Jeff right now, I apologize for making you guys watch that movie.
They haven't invented a word to describe how bad that movie is.
You don't really watch how much of it happens to you.
Scott, would this fall in line with highly ill-advised cinema?
No, absolutely not. For something to qualify as ill-advised cinema, it must be coming from a starting place of absolute lunacy. Like it had no chance. This is based on a pretty good Stephen King book, and on paper, it seems to have all the symptoms of what would end up being a pretty good movie at minimum, and it is absolutely not that. They really fucked this one up.
Yes,
I
they
hope we
did.
can curse on here.
Oh no, I have a filthy fucking mouth. If you ever listen to the previous episodes, it's so bad that our engineer kind of edits me out a lot.
They're gonna have to do a lot of editing if he has a problem with cursing. I have the mouth of an angel, by the way. Like my vocabulary is very good. It is not at all vulgar. It's only Scott. I never once have said a bad word in my life.
Fucking right. Good for you, man.
I do have the mouth of a drunken trucker. So
I think that's where me and you intersect, Scott, is our love of films and fucking cursing, you know?
Film and Fucks.
Yeah.
That's a new podcast right there. Film and Fucks.
All right, let's dive into this book first before we go into the movie. I like the book. Scott, you said you like it. Eric, what's your opinions on the book?
Should we give him a description of the book first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You start that off, Jeff.
I mean, all right. So pretty much, Cell is a road movie that takes place during the apocalypse, which was caused by some sort of nefarious cell phone signal. All right. I mean, that's pretty much the pitch for it, and it's yeah. I mean, it's very nuanced, as slow burning and kind of poetic at times. Like I've never actually. This is my first Stephen King book that I've ever actually read. I read it for the podcast, and he really does have a way with language, with descriptions.
Oh man, yeah. No, if your intro is Cell, like you have a whole big beautiful world open in front of you, buddy. Like that is like whatever you loved about that book is like to me Cell's kind of a middling King book. Like I really love the setup, but it kind of gets lost in itself a little bit to me in the middle of the book, and you can kind of feel him as a writer searching for his ending a lot, which tends to happen with some King. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that ends up being like a masterpiece, like The Stand, where he gets lost halfway through and then he figures out the way to crack it. But I didn't really feel that here. Like, but he's such a good writer of character that you really give a shit about the guys on the journey. So, and like you mentioned, this is kind of his take on a zombie movie, and very specifically like 28 Days Later style zombie movie, right? And this was, I think, published in the mid-aughts, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
2006.
Yeah.
Right. So this is obviously he was kind of fascinated by this new take on zombies, and he was also fascinated that he has this weird thing where he will hyper focus on specific tech, and he seems to be doubly I don't know, interested in cell phones. Like, because there's a story in If It Bleeds that's all about the beginning days of the iPhone and and what that meant to like old Luddites and and stuff. He is really fascinated by the cell phone, and so what's really interesting about this is that it's a cell phone tale that takes place pre advent of the iPhone. Right, so this is even him commenting on the like flip phone days where everybody had the cell phone on them.
Yeah, I found that I found that kind of quaint, the way he was describing cell phones. I was like, oh, that's cute. Yeah.
Oh, the olden days. Those are like the rotary phone versions of cell phones.
Right.
There were some dated references. Like there was the one part I started laughing at where he started saying. Eminem was right about Moby, and I was just like, I remember that from when I was in high school.
I remember Moby was a thing, and so was Eminem.
I mean, Moby's a piece of shit, so I agree with that. But I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
at least Eminem's not problematic at all, and has never been. So.
Yeah, no, he's he's a straight shooter, but he's honest and he's fair, and he's totally doesn't have any issues with women at all.
Or gay people.
Or gay people.
Or gay people at all. Yeah.
Scott, what's your thoughts on the book?
I really like the technophobia of it. There's a feeling in that book that Stephen King is just. When you read it upon release, the impression was Stephen King is scared of cell phones. It's sort of like an old man in a. You can imagine him putting it together, like being out in a public space and seeing everyone either looking at their phones or on their phones or whatever the fuck, and seeing a story within that, and then applying it to the zombie format. And I think there's something really endearing about that, and that quasi-obsession that Eric's touching on, I agree with. He keeps coming back to cell phones as a thing that, a thing that clearly fascinates him and repulses him in some way. And I don't know. Normally, I would be very annoyed by this, but I find that there's something kind of cute about it when King is doing it. Grandpa, that's very nice.
I mean, I see what he was trying to do, because there is times where I'm traveling to and from New York and I see people just walking aimlessly, looking at their phones as if they are zombies. I mean, my cell phone does dictate a lot of my life. I mean, I guess it dictates a lot of people's lives because we're all connected now.
Yeah, I mean, I've got that magic porn computer in my pocket wherever I go. So,
right. I mean, it has happened
it's hard
too.
To resist. It's hard to resist too. It's like you can even, you can hate social media all you want or whatever, and you're going to tell yourself you take a break, but the second that there's any downtime in your life and you have a cell phone on you, you're sitting at a stop light, or you're sitting, waiting in line at the grocery store, or whatever the hell you're doing, that you just have a moment where you're not immediately occupied doing something. The urge to pull out your phone and check whatever's the latest update on anything, it doesn't have to be a news story. It could just be like, oh, I wonder what the people I follow on Twitter have said in the last 3 minutes that they didn't say 3 minutes before. It is a really weird, like, hamster going to the little LSD water or whatever the hell, that experiment.
Yeah, I mean,
my favorite time to be checking my phone is while I'm watching the movie based on Stephen King himself. It is a great time to be checking your feed or your emails or playing Angry Birds 2, any of those.
They made a second one?
Oh, yeah. It's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, but like...
those birds are even angrier than they were before.
No,
they're fucking furious now.
They are pissed.
Yeah, like I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think Stephen King's kind of making a comment on that, because I find myself when in situations where I don't want to interact with people, or like I'm uncomfortable at the least bit with social interaction, I go straight to my phone, and I don't know if he deliberately made this kind of connection in the book, or if it was just like me imprinting my stuff onto it. But it's sort of like that whole entire group think, but separate entity type thing that is in the book. I don't know if that made sense or not, but
no, I get it.
Yeah,
and I would, if this was made in the era of the smartphone, I think it would be even more of a subtext to that. Because there is a lot of groupthink, going on, politically with any factions click. It's like it's weird how it's easy to fall into kind of that zombie horde mentality where you read a headline instead of reading the story, and everybody's guilty of it. Like no matter how much you're trying not to be that person, you read a headline about somebody who's you think is about to be canceled or needs to be canceled or something, and then that's it. And then there's no really need to dig further into it. I mean, listen, most times there isn't really a need to dig further into the people who are being canceled. I'm thinking the Blizzard guys right now, the guy that just had to resign from Blizzard for having his Cosby suite or whatever the hell he called it.
Well, I'm
gonna bring us up to speed on that real quick.
No, it's just there's a guy, and the only reason I know his name is Jesse McCree, and that's because they named a character in Overwatch after him. But it's a guy that he was just like a head honcho at Blizzard, and he jokingly had a room that was the Cosby Suite because it was called the Cosby Suite because he kept making all his female employees super uncomfortable in there. So yeah, I don't know if he ever went the extra mile. Like again, like I was saying, I didn't read the full story. I've only read little bits and pieces. But you know what I mean. It just feels like it's real easy to fall into that mob mentality now. It's easier than it's ever been, and it's always been pretty easy to do that. And a lot of King stories are all about that. The Mist is a prime example of that, where Mrs. Carmody uses religious fervor in The Mist to rally, ordinarily decent people into kind of murderous acts and stuff. When the pressure's on. I mean, you see that with QAnon, you see that with, all this conspiracy crap. It's like, it feels a little prescient, that kind of paralleling, people's cell phones turning them into zombies. It feels more prescient now than it probably did even back then.
Yeah,
no, definitely.
So let's jump. I mean, we all seem to generally enjoy the book. It's a really good character-driven, like B zombie story,
and I love the ending. I'm not going to give it away, but it's very ambiguous, you know, and I dig that.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to get into the ending now as we transition into the film because
can we call it do we have to call it a film?
Well, we'll call it whatever. We'll call it. I don't know what to call it, but I hope maybe Jeff, maybe you can do it one day. Maybe I can do it. Somebody needs to do this book justice because I mean, there's a good solid maybe 2.5 hour, maybe even a mini series with this book that would be really cool to see, and this isn't it.
HBO, I got a pitch for you. I got 3 episodes. I got 3 2-hour episodes for you. We'll do this book justice.
Yeah.
At a certain point, Eli Roth was going to write and direct this movie, and it's one of the few times where I can say the addition of Eli Roth would probably have been a boon to this particular production.
Yeah. Don't you hate yourself for having to say that?
I said that to Jeff right before we started recording. I was like, I would have rather seen the Eli Roth version of this than Todd this was so bad that I hope Todd Williams never directs another movie again. Like I have no interest in seeing anything else this dude has done.
I got a new rule: never trust anyone named Todd that spells it with 1D.
1D, yeah. Yeah, the good old 1D Todd. That's what we called him.
So the thing is, even Eli Roth is very hit or miss for me. I'm kind of taking the piss, but some of his movies I love, and then there's other ones that just don't work for me. Period. But the thing about an Eli Roth movie is it's never boring.
Yeah,
it has personality, and that is something.
Even if you are repelled by the message of the movie or what is happening on screen, you're not bored, and that's like the one thing a horror movie cannot be. It's boring. This movie is boring from top to bottom.
Yeah, so, I mean, I feel the same way. Like Eli Roth and Ty West, those guys. I may not like everything they do, but at least they tried.
Yeah,
right.
And no one tried with this fucking flaming.
It's so weird because this is all about a signal that turns people into like mindless zombies here, right? That's kind of what it felt like. John Cusack's eyes are dead throughout this whole thing.
Bump! Can we get a drum roll on that? You've been saving that, huh?
Yeah,
that was good.
But even Sam Jackson doesn't have anything to do, and this is a guy that can make a meal out of anything. He can work with George Lucas against the blue screen and still find something fun and interesting to do, right? Yeah. And maybe not in A Phantom Menace where all he did was sit in the chair and cross his fingers and say a couple of things cryptically. But even in the shittier later prequels, he's at least having fun, right? And you can tell that. And like that, I felt so bad for him, like watching this thing, because I was like, he's trying. Like you could see the gears in his mind going, well, I guess I'll just sit here in this apartment and have a conversation about this dude's graphic novel for 15 minutes. It's like he just doesn't have anything to do. Like he feels bored, and like this is the guy that was enthusiastically, screaming about snakes on planes. Like this is a guy that can find, any glimmer of character work or entertainment in what he does, and even he was failing here.
Yeah, he was the most.
You can see him like thinking about the pool he's going to install in his backyard while he's on screen reading his lines.
Let me tell you something. Sundays is edible day for me, and I ate too much yesterday of an edible, so I was like riding super high yesterday. And even me riding super high, I was just watching this. I was just like, that was a bad choice. That was a bad edit cut. Maybe don't do that. And I remember I just kept going in, and eventually I went in on myself, where I'm just like
deconstructing your life choices.
Well, I'm just sitting there like, what happens if I ever made a movie this bad? Like, I wouldn't come out of my house. I would hide in my hole. Like, I just started thinking, I was so embarrassed by this movie that I started like projecting it onto myself. And I was just like, what the fuck? How did this happen?
Yeah. I refuse to think or believe that this is the movie they set out to make. I want to hear the backstory to Cell.
Right.
Like, how badly did this transform from the script to screen, quote unquote? Because I mean, it never even made it to screens.
King co-wrote the script, first of all.
Did he?
You know, so there was some, and he adjusted the ending from the novel. This is what I was saying earlier about how, like, you know, on paper, this should have been at least pretty good. But this movie has all the familiar hallmarks. A movie that was, like, drafted by committee. Too many cooks in the kitchen, so what happens is you end up with something really bland, really boring, because there's no singular vision behind it. And I looked it up. There were 27 fucking producers on this movie. 27! On this movie.
What?
You know, you get over 15 producers on a movie. 27 is just insane.
And Cusack himself was a producer at one point.
That's probably just me. Here's my assumption on that. This is my pure speculative guess on this. Is this movie feels to me like the kind of movie that was greenlit at like, say, $30 million, and then goes through prep, and then they get like a couple of weeks from shooting, and then suddenly they go, sorry, you have $15 million now, and now shoot this. You know, all the CG is super wonky. They try to have these big set pieces that, you know, there's a plane that crashes at the beginning of the movie, and it looks like an Adobe After Effects thing. It looks like Sharknado, almost. And so I'm led to. That's why the thing feels so small. Like they try to roll with it, I guess, and try to make it more of a character study. But then that's what leads to all these 15-minute sections. Man, there's multiple in the movie where the characters just get into an apartment or like a pub or whatever and just sit down and talk for 20 minutes at a time. So my theory is that John Cusack got an exec credit because they had to cut his salary. They had to cut his money. So he got a producer credit on this.
But here's the thing. Like, all right, yeah, they cut the budget, but a good director would have been able to roll with those punches and do something more. Like, the lack of funds does not mean the lack of creativity.
Yeah, man. Because
absolutely, and when you have these two actors who have good charisma, like they're coming off of one of the better underappreciated and under talked about actually Stephen King adaptations, and that's 1408. And you know, this pairing of these two, and Cusack's been in, you know, lots of good you know, he's been in good Stephen King stuff. He's in Stand By Me, for God's sake, you know, so he has that ability to tap into the material. 1408 is a great example, and he's got such great chemistry with Sam Jackson in his like two scenes he has with him in 1408, and so you feel like that just by itself. Okay, you don't have a budget. Well, then make those interactions interesting. Put these two people who clearly, you know, have a good charisma on screen, you know, together in exciting situations, or even with exciting dialogue, and it could just be two people at a table talking, and suddenly you're riveted. That is absolutely something they couldn't figure out. You're right on that.
Yeah, because it's in the book. You know, Tom and Clay. You know, they grow over their journey to be like the best of friends, or at least close, comrades. Watching Cusack and Jackson in this, they don't even look like they like being in the same room together.
Right.
I think that goes to Todd Williams. He just wasn't giving direction, and I think you needed somebody who was passionate about the material. I mean, look at The Green Knight. That movie looks like it cost like 60, 80 million, and then I found out it cost only 15 million. I'm like, that's craft. That's when you have a director who's committed to this, has great craftspeople, knows how to use them well, knows how to work with his actors and get great performances, and knows how to just roll with the punches. It's very clear here Todd Williams just didn't really know what he was doing.
Todd Williams felt like he was getting Eli Roth's sloppy seconds, and he did the movie accordingly.
I mean, the biggest movie he directed outside of this was Paranormal Activity 2, and he only got that because the original director dropped out. So
I'm noticing a pattern with Todd Williams' filmography.
It's like, what's Todd up to? Oh, hey guys.
I mean,
did you have a director who just left the project? You call Todd with 1D.
I mean, he's doing something right. He's married to Gretchen Mol, so.
Listen, I've noticed that like all these like really terrible directors have a great reputation for like I'm thinking of Paul W.S. Anderson, for example. He's got a great reputation for just talking a great game in a room, and maybe that's this guy. Maybe he can go in and make it sound like he's the smartest guy in the room, and it's quite possible that would explain why he could, have the filmography he does and still get work. But yeah, I mean, just on a craft level, I mean, this is like this really shitty, like Paul Greengrass era shaky cam that he does.
That's in my notes right here. Like it doesn't stop moving.
Yes. Like,
and that to me always is a really good indicator. Not, it doesn't necessarily mean that the director doesn't know what they're doing, but it's always a great indicator that the director isn't confident in what he or she is setting up when it's nothing but handheld, shaky everywhere. Sometimes it can be used to perfect effect. That's the we mentioned 28 Days Later and Danny Boyle. Like he uses that for a tone in there, but here there is just no rhyme or reason to the shaky cam and the handheld. It is quite literally just like, I don't know what else to do, and I don't know how else to get the shot or frame the shot, so I'm just going to try to guerrilla style shake the camera in this conversation, even if it doesn't add anything to the scene.
And like on the whole entire idea of I don't know what to do, let's talk about all the random fan service that's throughout the movie that has no context.
Yeah.
Like in the airport scene where Clay smashes I guess Pixie Little Pixie one of the girls with the paperweight, right? And they in the book the paperweight has the paperweight has a backstory,
right?
And right. And in this it's just there. Right, and the only reason I know it's there is what its significance is because I read the book. I shouldn't have had to read the book in order to know the significance of things in the movie. That's a failure for adaptations in general. Like I should be able to watch this on its own without having any kind of context. I mean, I've seen porn parodies with more thoughtful approaches to the source material than this.
For sure. There's a lot of weird stuff happening in the margins of this movie that you might not even notice, but like once you notice it, you can't stop. Like for instance, this was the second or third attempt I'd made to watch the movie before I finally completed, and I was honestly only able to complete it because I knew I was going to have to come on here and discuss it. Without that, self-imposed gun to my head, there's no way I would have made it. But right off the bat, in like the earliest scene, I noticed that like Cusack puts on his hat.
Yes.
When he's still in the airport, and I was like, "What is he putting his hat on right now?" Like of all things, what are you worried about that for? And then he's wearing it constantly through the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure there's a scene in there that I'm forgetting where he takes it off for a minute. But it seems like he's basically just wearing it for the rest of the movie. And then once you start noticing it, the weirder it gets as it goes along. And you start to wonder, like, so is this a thing where, like, he told him day one, I want to wear a hat. And they were like, no, fuck it. You don't need to wear a hat for this entire movie. He's just like, I want to wear a hat. I'm going to wear a hat. They're like, well, just give us 10 minutes in, like, just in the opening, don't wear the hat. Then you can put it on. And he can't even wait to get out of the airport. And then he just wears it, so he doesn't have to do his hair every day on the fucking set. That's what that felt like to me.
Right. You make a great point. The reason it's so noticeable is because they picked the weirdest time for him to decide to put on his cap, his little knit cap. Because, like, this is where, right at the beginning of the outbreak, the cell signal is turning everybody in this airport into zombies. Chaos is going, is running rampant. Women are, like, going nuts and ramming their heads in the walls, and security guards are shooting people, and like all this stuff is happening. And he ducks behind some chairs and does that, kind of. I like picture like a 12-year-old playing hide and seek, kind of exaggerated, like looking around at, does anybody see me? Does anybody see me? And then for no reason, he just makes a show of putting on his knit cap and it pulls it out of his pocket in the middle of all this chaos as everybody's going crazy, as people are dying and screaming and killing each other. He fucking grabs his hat and puts it on and then looks around some more and then runs out.
I mean,
it is so bizarre.
In my mind, it's sort of like it's his Superman costume change. He puts on the hat and he's like, it's apocalypse time. And he's just
that's where his courage is.
That's where it
like
is.
A post-apocalyptic Frosty.
Well,
Frosty the Snowman.
While we're talking about John Cusack, I want to get everybody's opinion here on the changes they did to Clay Riddell, the character. In the book, he's pretty likable for the most part. He's like a dude who's estranged from his wife, who's trying to get his graphic novel published. In this, he straight up abandoned the family and is just around in his own apartment in Boston, just fucking this young chick.
Like straight up lying to his wife, on the phone. Is like, are you seeing anyone, Clay? It's like, no, baby, it's just making comic books.
As he's putting his dick away in his pants, man. Like, and I'm just like, I don't even think they make an attempt to redeem this dude in the movie.
Well, I mean, him going to get his son, I guess that is his redemptive arc, but like, there's no urgency to it. He doesn't seem like he's like, oh, I gotta get to my son, I gotta rescue him, and it's sort of just like, well, it's the weekend, I gotta go pick up my son. That's how it felt. Yeah. He felt like weekend dad.
Because, like, they make the point right off the bat that he did abandon them. So you're kind of like, well, he doesn't even like the fucking kid. You know what I'm saying? So any quest to get the kid back is sort of like, well, you could have had the kid for all this time, but you walked away because you wanted to make comic books or some shit. It's a weird choice.
I mean, the whole entire casting of everybody is just weird. Like, in the book, Tom McCarthy is, he's a slight little dude who, grows over the course of the book and becomes, sort of the courage or the heart of the book. And in the movie, they just cast him as Samuel L. Jackson as this fucking grizzled Vietnam War vet who just happens to who just happens to be gay, but not really gay, because he mentions it once in the most awkward scene. They're coming out of the fucking subway tunnel, and John Cusack's like, yeah, I gotta go. I'm gonna find my wife and my kid. And it's like, what about you, Tom? It's like, yeah, my husband left me. Let's go.
Duly noted. Will this ever come up again in this movie? Nope.
So Samuel Jackson's like, I only have to say it once, right? I only have to say that he's my husband once, right? All right, let's do it. Let's get it out of the way.
Also, what a lazy ass crowbarred in reference to The Shining, where a dude in the subway comes out from around the corner and takes the axe to the young guy's chest, the DJ's chest. Yeah. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that could have possibly been a reference to another Stephen King movie, just because this movie's so fucking bad. They accidentally did something smart.
I won't even call that smart, because what the fuck was the purpose of that, dude?
Because they had to get what is his name? DJ Flight Plan or something like that?
Some shit like that.
DJ 5 minute on screen.
And you know what? The way the characters come together in this movie feels like so forced and awkward, where it felt so natural in the book. Like everything in this movie feels so forced. Like there's no narrative thrust. It's just shit happening just because it has to.
Right. As I say, you compare this to something like The Walking Dead, and it's fun to clown on it now when it's been running on fumes for multiple seasons. But those first few seasons of The Walking Dead really captured that kind of emotional, traumatic feeling of a post-apocalyptic thing going down. And this one, you're right. It's so, you mentioned it feeling like a lazy weekend or whatever to go pick up the kid, and that's kind of the way it feels. It doesn't really feel like a big deal, weirdly enough, that the world ended.
Right, there's no urgency.
No, I mean, it's only like Isabel Furman's character, she plays Alice, who like seems to be affected by anything at all. Everybody else is just like sociopathically calm.
Talk about sociopathically calm.
There is no, so weird. It's such a weird choice. Although I will say that I really, the thing on this viewing, because I'm much like Scott, I've tried to watch this through all the way like 2 or 3 times, and it's the first time I've made it to the end. But what I noticed, and maybe it's because I noticed it now since he was just in the Stand miniseries, but Owen Teague plays the kid, the student, that like Stacy Keach's protege or whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, this kid's actually trying. Like, and he played Harold in the Stand miniseries. The Stand miniseries has a bunch of problems on its own.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that.
But it, yep, that's right. Like he's like this kind of a new Stephen King adaptation staple that nobody really talks about. But he's great as Harold, and he's like, I was super surprised actually when we got to that section where they go to the college campus, and there's like this professor and shit that still survives, and he's got one of his young page boys or whatever around, which is weird in and of itself. But like that was like the part of the movie where I was like, I perked up just a little bit, because this kid was like delivering an actual like performance, a good, I would even say a good performance. You believed that, that he was in an end times movie when nobody else seemed to be. And then like Stacy Keach was able to choose scenery, and they give him some really terrible exposition, because he's the one who has to sit there and explain about how the zombies will turn themselves off at night and recharge or whatever, and all this stuff. And it had a little life for it right in that moment. And then of course they blow up, they blow up a bunch of, sleeping zombies that somehow accidentally also killed half of the other people there too. So
yeah.
Hold on, I want to talk about that because it's emblematic of this entire movie's problem, which is once again that it on paper this should be something worth getting a little excited about. But here's a scene where John Cusack and company in a tanker truck, filled with gas, are hosing down a field of zombies and listening to the Trollolo Guy song on the radio.
While drinking scotch.
And when I was watching this yesterday, I was like tweeting about it intermittently, because that would occasionally relieve me of having to look at the screen. And I described that moment, and there were people in my mentions that were like, all right, you sold me on it, man. I'm going to check this out. And I'm like, no. Yes, conceptually, the idea of John Cusack driving a tanker truck through a field of zombies and closing them down with gasoline while listening to the Trollolo Guy song should be a very effective, if not wildly entertaining scene. And somehow it isn't. That's the whole movie in a nutshell, is that little, that moment. And also, not for nothing, but like, I'm like sitting there watching it, and I was like, is that the Trollolo Guy song? Absolutely not. Like, what would that be doing in here? And then I turned it way up, and I was like, oh my fucking God, it is. It's the least possible entertaining sequence, you could come up with those various elements.
And accidentally
really
kind of
wild shit.
a meme, right? It's almost accidentally because that's a kind of a famous meme thing. It's
Right.
like having the Numa Numa song or something, you know, running through like what's supposed to be a tense section, and then that whole fucking thing it caps off with the dumbest possible thing in the world, because they set fire to all these zombies and they burn and they go up in flames, and then the fire, apparently they just figured they would park the gas truck
Right next to them.
right next to it without turning the gas off. So they like set fire to this field, and suddenly they see the line of fire like Raiders of the Lost Ark going to the gas truck next to them. It is the dumbest shit in the world, and if they had set that up in any sort of way to make his character look like a complete moron, then that would have been like an all-timer scene for me. But just because it just comes off as, you know, a dumb decision, like, really? These guys are supposed to be the smart ones? These are the survivors?
These are the heroes.
I don't get it. Like, if they were, if John Cusack was the Jack Burton of this movie, then I would enjoy it so much more. This kind of idiot that's stumbling his way through, you know, and coming out on top, you know, somehow. Like that is the version of this movie I want to see.
That's that.
This cast.
I love that
would
movie
actually
right
be a
there.
creative choice. That's a creative choice versus say, well, he's a guy. And that's it. That's the characterization. He's a guy. Does he have a backstory? Yes, but you're not going to care about it.
It doesn't fucking matter.
With the worst CG fire ever, too.
The worst everything, man. Like the worst CG fire,
The CG smoke.
and like I think even the accidental stake that pierces Stacy Keach's heart was CG.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love how they give all of the kids like the pupils' lines from the book to Stacy Keach. They steal all of his lines, and he just gives the most like confused performance ever. Like he doesn't
Yeah, you could tell he had no idea what those words combined together actually meant. But like again, but at least he gave
megabytes.
I will give him that. There's for a little split second there was some personality in there, but you know, it is such a way, like, just to have Stacy Keach in a Stephen King movie and you do that to him.
I guarantee you, Stacy Keach asks, "How can I deliver these lines? What am I supposed to be doing here?" And Todd Williams is just like, you know, just read it, just deliver it, man.
It's like, you know,
well, you're a professor kind of dude, so we're gonna sit you next to a fire in like a library. So, and you're gonna explain away everything about these zombies that we're gonna need to know going into the next act of this movie.
it's like they're rebooting, and they got megabytes of brain power, and
And there's 2%. You only use 2% of your brains, and yeah.
Stacy Keach.
All right. Well, speaking of, I would like to get to Alice, because Alice was
poor Alice.
Alice in the book. That shit broke my heart like twice
Right.
now, because I remember reading the first time and being devastated by that, and then knowing it was coming back up, I was like, man, this sucks. And you read that in the book, and that just breaks your heart. And in the movie, when Alice dies, it's just like, okay.
In a bar fight.
Yeah, I just shrugged my shoulders. I was like, okay. At this point, sure. It had, like, that was one of the big emotional impacts in the book, and that could have been a big emotional impact in this movie, and they even squandered that.
Well, if you even cared about her, I mean, what did she have, like, maybe 10 lines in the whole entire fucking movie besides screaming?
True.
You know?
Even the way she shows up is just weird in this movie.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, let me in.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we let her in? Yep. Yeah, okay. It is so weird, and she's also made a career. This is Isabelle Fuhrman's the name of the actress, and she's made a career out of like playing much younger than what she is. Because in the book, I think she's like a teenager, and she's like 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they don't really dwell on it, but she has a thing that she has an orphan where you're like, is this a kid or not? Like, is she supposed to be a kid? Is she supposed to not be a kid?
Because she looks
Like,
25.
Yeah.
But she looks 25, but she looks like 25, like playing like a schoolgirl for Halloween or something, right? Like it's weird, like just the way that she's carrying, like does her hair and all that. It's such a weird little niche that she carved, and she's great in Orphan. Like Orphan's like a really fun.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
Like
a really fun twisty thing, and she's awesome in it.
I mean, good for her for getting out of Cell unscathed, I guess.
Well, no one saw it.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. You know, easy to come out of a movie unscathed if no one goes and sees it. This thing did $1 million at the box. One. Samuel L. Jackson, John Cusack, Stephen King movie made $1 million. That's almost like physically impossible to pull off. Just incredible stuff.
Well, I know this was being handed around from distributor to distributor for a while. Like nobody wanted to put it out. It was like hot potato between all these indie.
Right, yeah.
And
someone drew the straw eventually and had to do it.
Well, you know, I saw the Saban Films logo at the beginning. I was like, okay, well, this is it. Saban's put out some questionable stuff.
But then they also put out some really good stuff.
Like what?
I don't know. I was just trying to be nice.
The only thing I know Saban has put out, and this is because I was a kid in the 90s and I grew up in the 90s, it was Power Rangers. And I've rewatched that shit since then. And you know what, man? I'm going to let that stuff stay in the past.
Yeah. That is a good call. I'm a little bit older than you are, and I grew up with like He-Man and Transformers and shit, and every time I've gone back to revisit that, it's like, yep, nope, I should have just let my memories be my memories.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to the end of the movie, man, because I want to talk about this.
Wait. Since we're on this whole entire trek going through how shitty this movie is, we can't forget about how they got rid of the Dan character from the book, made it Ray, and made Ray fucking crazy.
Oh, you know, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead. Take the lead on this.
All right. So in the book, our survivors are friends. They meet up with another group of people, and you know they go on a further trek through infested territory. And there's three characters. There's a woman, Denise. There's the older man, Dan, and there's this Bostonian, you know, Southie dude named Ray. And, you know, Ray makes this ultimate sacrifice for something, blah, blah. I don't want to, like, ruin the book if you want to read the book. And Dan is sort of like the de facto mini leader of this other group. They got rid of all of that, and they put they put this guy named Ray, like, you know, in there, who just seems to be fucking crazy because he's been up for 7 days, and he just happens to be a munitions professional, you know. And in the book,
as you do,
in the book, Ray has this whole entire exchange with Clay talking about, you know, how he gives him a cell phone and he's like, oh, okay, well, you'll know when to use this, right? And then Ray shoots himself very simply. In the fucking movie, Ray drags Clay out to the middle of the woods, opens up his vest, and he's just got this explosive collar on.
Right? Like out of Running Man.
Right. And I'm like, what? The one thing you could have gotten right, like this simple interaction between these two, you had to fuck it up and make it a bigger budget than you had and put an explosive vest on this dude with the worst CG explosion ever.
Lots of CG in this movie.
So much CG, even the spray paint CG. I'm not even shitting you.
Yeah.
Like, how does, like...
Yeah, it would have been cheaper just to use real fucking spray paint, right?
It would have been cheaper to spray paint and then, like, go back to the owner of whatever. Like, yeah, I'm going to paint over that.
Yeah. Right.
I'm going to buy you a new sign.
They could have used actual spray paint to just spray paint a bunch of fire on some plywood. And it would have
really go like Imaginarium, Dr. Fantastic with it.
So I just had to make mention of that because I just thought that was the dumbest fucking move.
No, you're right, because Ray is instrumental to the end of the book. You know what I mean? Because, he's the one who puts together those explosives. So that way, that's what kills the Raggedy Man. Oh, real quick, let's talk about the Raggedy Man.
Let's talk about the Raggedy Man.
Shit, I forgot about.
Let's talk about the president of the goddamn internet.
So, in the book, my man's is imposing and scary. Like, you read the way King described him, and he's terrifying. In the movie,
and he shows up in dreams and shit, and he's kind of like a new Randall Flagg, from the Stand kind of character. Yeah.
And all the way going through the book, right? I'm like, oh wow, I can't wait to watch this fucking movie because at least they have to get the Raggedy Man right? Like. they've got to. Like that's your villain right there.
And instead it ends up being this skinny, pasty, no offense guys, white guy who's just like who looks younger than me, who's just like, nah.
Who's got some Beats headphones.
Yeah.
Got a little mud on his face.
I'm like, you needed a
physically imposing is Dane DeHaan going to the store in his pajamas.
Oh shit. Yeah, man, you needed somebody who's big and imposing, like physically, like, oh man, I'm not going to fuck with this guy. And instead it's just like, oh well, I could fuck this dude up in like 2 seconds.
And they did.
Right.
And they did.
Oh man.
Yeah, no. It reminds me. There's you have probably an unnatural appreciation for Scary Movie 2. Like, I don't really like the Scary Movies all that much, but I love Scary Movie 2. It's a weird thing. I don't know why, but there's a sequence in there where Anna Faris is being chased by a skeleton, and like, and her friend is just like screaming and like, oh my god, what is it? She's like, wait a minute, that's what you're afraid of? That's just bones. That's what I got a feeling of here with this guy. Like, would you run from Cliff to Flockhart?
Oh shit. Yeah. So,
and why don't they call him the Raggedy Man in the actual fucking movie? Does like Tina Turner own the rights to Raggedy Man? Like,
why does half this shit happen in the movie? There's like, they go up to the kid on the swing. Like, if you see a kid on a swing by himself just swinging back and forth, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get the fuck out of there.
I do that now, man. Like, I see
when everybody's going crazy.
Yeah.
And I love how, all right, so they're first, when they're in the woods and they're being chased by the phoners, all of a sudden,
Sam Jackson's
just
like, fuck this shit.
And he just fucking unloads on them like it's Rambo 8. And I was like, what are we watching?
And then they keep running right after that. I was like, what the fuck? What, like, that, it's a choice, man. Like, every part of this movie, I was like, that is a choice.
That is a choice. Like how they hide under the boat to avoid the horde, and I'm like, but I can see you. So they have to be able to see you. Like, the most obvious place to hide.
At the end of the movie, for people who haven't read the book or seen the movie, never see the movie,
I think they should. If I had to watch it, they have to watch it. Everybody should watch this movie.
If you're listening to this podcast, you are morally obliged to suffer the same trauma
under penalty of death.
If you're laughed even once, entertained at all by our suffering, then you owe it to us and to everybody else listening.
Spoiler alert
to watch this one.
Spoiler alert for our listeners: do not do what I do. You watch this sober. Do not watch it on an edible, because then you will just start questioning every fucking life choice you've made up until this point. Like,
like, what is life? What is life?
Well, I watched it sober and I kind of had the same reaction, so I don't know. That might just be the
movie. So at the end of the movie, it finds out they changed the ending where Clay is now part of the horde and is now mindlessly running around in the circle, and that him saving his son was a little dream sequence, whereas in the book, he does find his son, and it ends on an ambiguous note, and it's a beautiful ambiguous note, and it's really left up to you about what happens next. And I love that. Yeah. I really love that.
There's a little hope. There's a little hope.
Just a little bit of hope.
Ending, but there's a little tinge of hope. Right. Maybe there's some hope for that he can get his kid back. And yet here it's so confusing. Like I actually kind of like the idea of this is what's going on in the brains of all the phoners, right? Where they're still they're humans, the human part of them is in there, and for John Cusack, you get a glimpse of him like walking his son back to the safe zone or whatever, and everything's happy and fine. But then you realize that just what's playing in his mind, as he's just mindlessly part of this, zombie horde now.
And that would have been a beautiful sentiment in a better movie.
Well, yeah. Well, and if they landed that concept, because right now it's just confusing. It's like, wait, did he blow up? He didn't blow up. I thought he blew. Oh no, I guess he didn't. But he was engulfed in CGI fire.
But here's my thing.
That was the dream. Is this the dream? I don't get it. Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. Because that ending is like, to me, it was a good ending. Like, I don't know why they went back and did that shit.
Right. Because they could.
I think once you've seen John Cusack in full zombie mode, shambling toward the camera, looking like he's dealing with a hangover or something. I mean,
and it's not all that different from his performance in the rest of the movie.
They had to build up this incredible moment. I mean, good Lord. It's almost worth sitting through this movie just to get to that, 4 seconds of John Cusack sort of like,
that was bad. To give Scott his credit, man, that was just laughably bad. Like all around. Yeah. I mean, all the phoners look like they didn't know what they were doing. Like, act like a zombie. They're like,
it's like, what kind of zombie am I going to act like? Give me some directions.
Yeah.
Like, I
figure it out.
Yeah. I'm considering this part of John Cusack's chrysalis stage where he emerged. Like, he'll come out on the other end of all of these really shitty direct-to-video movies as a beautiful butterfly of acting, just like Nicolas Cage has. Like he's going through his Nicolas Cage phase of just doing these shitty direct-to-video movies, and then on the other end, he came out and he gave us Pig, and he gave us
Color Out of
Space, and Mandy. I think the same thing for Cusack right now. He's just doing these really shitty movies to pay off whatever fucking Taiwanese drug lord he owes.
It's tragic. That's just tragic to me. It's like watching Bruce Willis in all these direct-to-video, things where he's just gone. Like there's no spark to his eyes, and then you go watch an episode of Moonlighting, and you go, God, this guy was the funniest. Dude, when he gives a shit, he is so great, and why can't he just give a shit more? And I have the same thing with Cusack. Like, well, go back and watch Better Off Dead again, and he is so fucking funny and just so alive. Like he could stand shoulder to shoulder with Val Kilmer in that era, where he is so great to watch and so entertaining to watch and emotional to watch. Even in Say Anything, like that's not a goofy comedy like One Crazy Summer or Better Off Dead, but it's it's an emotional movie, and he sells it. He is so good when he is engaged, and it's not even just the material, because you can, as we've mentioned, like I guess maybe sells the example, because that's where you send good actors to give shitty performances. Sorry, Sam Jackson, but but just for the most part, he just seems to be so checked out, and that's such a bummer to me as a movie fan, because it just feels like we've lost decades of really good stuff. Go watch Gross Point Blank again and just see how alive he is.
Yeah, like why haven't we made that a show?
Project, like that, the last half dozen Cusack movies I've seen, it seems like most of them he picked because they allowed his character to bake on screen. Like he's clearly very into vaping. That has become sort of a trademark of his in these later years, and I was surprised to see that he doesn't vape himself. It would seem,
Well, that's why he was wearing the hat.
Oh yeah, he got one of the two demands in, but
Yes.
no vaping, unfortunately.
If I can't rip some sweet clouds, some sweet cotton, I'm gonna throw him on a little knit cap.
Is there anything, we got to wrap up, but is there anything you guys would like to plug?
Eric, you go.
Well, you can always listen to us discussing various Stephen King projects on the KingCast. That is available wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, whatever. And so our format for that show is a lot like this, where we have guests on and we kind of break down the books and the movies that are adapted from them. We've recently had a run where we had a bunch of the cast of the Suicide Squad come on. We had David S. Mulchin talking about Graveyard Shift. We had Steve Agee, who was kind of the on-set King Shark and plays John Economos, who was Viola Davis's right-hand man. He came on to talk Shawshank Redemption, and we have episodes coming up about the Dead Zone and some pretty interesting guests in the future. So if you're at all interested in Stephen King stuff, come and listen to us bullshit a while. Things can get a little crazy over there, but certainly more entertaining than watching The Cell. I can tell you that much.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on, and I apologize on behalf of Brandon for this piece of shit.
I really had a good time with you guys, so I will make you this. It's an open invitation. You guys could come back again. You two pick. This time, you guys pick the movie. Pick the movie.
All right, I'm going to Mangler 2.0. Got it.
I've already seen the Mangler 2.0. Thank you very much, and I loved it. So let's do this.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
We're the Film Blurs. I'm Brandon Norwood, and I'm the motherfucking protagonist.
I'm the protagonist.
I'm Jeff Stewart, a.k.a. He Who Remains.
Don't come at us. It's just fucking movies.
You've been listening to the Film Blurs podcast.
Man, I just love what you guys do, man.
I never miss an episode. It's the best.
It's my favorite podcast.
Follow Jeff on IG on MindFire XL and Brandon on Twitter at BJN Tweets.